g3, we have a wooden shield, we have all kinds of fossils, and white will lose the game. Magnus plays knight e2 to guard the pawn here, and now I play the move bishop takes h3. Now, one good thing here is that I am down to 5 seconds, but there is an increment, obviously, since it's Title Tuesday, but secondarily, the position is simplifying, so my moves now become easier because when you have less pieces on the board to coordinate, generally it's much easier to tunnel on where things belong. So I take, we get takes, I go knight g4, takes, king d2, knight f1, Magnus goes king e1, and here I play the move knight e3. Now, for a second time in the game, Magnus has the opportunity to make a draw by repetition after king d2 and king e1, but instead he decides not to do it. Now, I'll also point out if white were to go king c3 here, after a move like a5, there are all kinds of ideas here, like bishop b4, trying to checkmate the king in the middle of the board. There are ideas like a4 and b5 to harass the bishop, and at this point, it's very hard for white to play. So Magnus decides to play rook h1. Now, here I play the move knight d7, we get king d2, and I go knight g4. Now, in this position, Magnus Carlsen makes a big mistake with knight d4. It's also interesting to note, however, that as you've noticed over the last couple of moves, if we just go back here, Magnus at this point in the game right here has 1 minute. He spends 21 seconds. Now he spends 1 second, but right here, he spends 20 seconds. And as we reach this late middle game position with no queens on the board and it's getting complicated, Magnus has squandered the time advantage. So there's some question as to whether maybe Magnus Carlsen is feeling the Hikaru effect because he thought he should be much better, couldn't find it, and now we're simply in the big scramble, or the clown fiesta, as the internet aficionados like to call it. So we get this position where Magnus plays knight d4, and this is a huge error because now I get rook to f2, checking the king and creating the kebab on the 7th rank where I impale all the pawns. We get to move king to c1, and now I castle my king out of the center. Now at this point, black is much better primarily because white has his rook and the king. This rook, if it were on e1, for example, on an open lane, would be doing very well. But with the king on c1 and the rook on a1, it's very tough to finish this development. On top of that, I've got this great rook on the 2nd rank. There's a weak pawn on g3, and it's just very difficult to defend. So Magnus plays knight f5. Now I go bishop to e5, guarding the pawn, targeting the pawn on g3, the knight on d4, and covering the long diagonal as well. This, of course, is what we know commonly as the wooden shield. So now Magnus plays move knight to e7. Now it's clear that Magnus is flustered. We're in the scramble here. He does not have easy moves. He plays knight e7 check, and now I play the move king b8. Now there's a very famous question that was asked some years ago before the World Championship match between Magnus and Jan Nepomniachtchi, where there's a question, does Magnus know how the horsey moves? Now, he's clearly very much eyeing this idea of king c7 and knight e6 to fork the king. But what I think Magnus forgets to realize is that the horsies have a lot of jumps, but if the horsies get stuck near enemy lines and there are no pieces to guard them, the horsies are not that good. So I play king b8. I do not blunder the fork with knight e6, and now Magnus plays move knight e6. Now what Magnus probably should have gone for was a desperado sacrifice, sacking both the ponies here as he creates a bit of a family fork. But after king c7 takes here, with the two connected juicers running up the board, the lack of development between the king and the rook, I still should probably win the game. Instead, Magnus plays knight e6, and now I go rook to e8 here. And this move is actually a very strong move in this position because suddenly, out of nowhere, white's horse on e7 is dead. The horse cannot jump anywhere. g6 is covered by the pawn. f5 is covered by the rook. d5 is covered by the pawn. So Magnus has tried to use the two horses, jump them in behind enemy lines, but in the process, he's gotten them trapped, and now Magnus is simply going to lose the game. So Magnus decides to go d4. Here I play the move bishop takes g3. The horsey on e7 still has no escape squares. Magnus now plays the move rook takes h7. Now this move loses immediately, but at this point the result really isn't in doubt here. Maybe Magnus could have tried to move like knight to f5, hoping to get this fork of the towers here. But even in this position, if I play a move like rook ff8, takes here, say white goes king d2 and knight f6 here, with these knights guarding each other, the pawn coming down the board, say we got something like this just to illustrate it. The knights guard each other, bishop guards the pawn. This is just going to be winning as the knights, the bishop, and the pawn will run down the board. So Magnus plays the move rook takes h7. Here I play the move rook to f1, checking the king, exposing it, and winning the tower on a1. Magnus goes king d2, I take the tower, we get rook takes g7, and here I play the move bishop to e1. Now, of course, even though I'm up one rook here, he still has the rook on the 7th with the kebab, the two horses near my king, so I need to play about 2 or 3 more good moves, just consolidate the position, and if I do that, I will win. But with only 3 seconds on the clock, you never know what can happen. So I play bishop to e1. Magnus now goes king to e2, and here I play the move knight g to f6, retreating the horsey. It's no longer under attack on this g4 square, and now the horseys connect nicely, and I am free to bring my bishop back and win the game with all these pins on the file. Magnus plays knight to f5, and here I go bishop to b4, stopping knight to d6, but also threatening to play rook to e1 check, winning the horse and the bishop on these squares. Magnus plays c3, and now I play knight to f8. This is an excellent move that I find right away. It's not the only way to win, but at this point, as I've said in many of my videos for beginners out there, when you're ahead in material like I am here with one extra tower, get the knights, get the bishop, get the rooks, get everything off the board in equal trades if you can. So I go knight f8. Magnus plays rook to f7 here. Probably a mouse slip at this point, but even after pawn takes bishop and knight takes knight here, white is going to lose the game. If you move the rook, I don't know, to g3, I have knight takes d4, creating the classic fossil as well as a family fork. And if white trades the bishop after takes, king f2, many ways to win, but probably cleanest is to go a6, avoid any ice skater checkmates as you create the Lufthansa for the king. No ideas with rook g8, and now the two towers will beat the one tower. So after rook f7, I take the horse, and here Magnus Carlsen decides to resign the game. Even though we're both very low on time here, I now have an extra rook as well as a minor piece in this case after takes, and something like bishop to a5 here. With an extra rook and a bishop, there's no way Magnus will survive, no chance of cheesing on the clock, and it's simply not enough. So, what does that mean? I get a huge victory against Magnus in this final game. This catapults me into a big tie for first place alongside Gukesh and Sindarov. Unfortunately, due to my issues early in the tournament with the disconnection from chess.com during the third round and getting a 0-point bye, my tiebreaker would suffer immensely and I would finish in third place on tiebreak. But overall, I can't be too unhappy because I scored 9.5 points out of 10 in the games that I played. I went undefeated, no losses, and I also beat Magnus Carlsen in the El Clasico matchup once again, which I think is the third time in a row that I beat him in either Title Tuesday or Freestyle Friday. So very, very good stuff. I go undefeated. Sure, I get third on tiebreaks, but it's always fun to play against the best players in the world. And once again, I show that I still belong, and it's not yet time for the dreaded R word to be enforced. All right, you guys. So on that note, I hope you guys have enjoyed this recap from the early Title Tuesday, today, March 25th of the great year 2025. If you are not already subscribed to the channel, make sure that you smash that subscribe button below, and we'll be back with some more great recaps and content in the coming days and weeks, especially with the upcoming freestyle event in Paris in about 10 days. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your Tuesday, and I'll see you all very soon. Have a good one. Bye.